Welcome to the Photographer Show with Scott and Lori, where we talk to you, the everyday photographers in the photo focus community, about your love of photography and dig into some of the fun, nerdy stuff we all love about the art and craft of photography. Hi, Lori.
Hello, how are you?
Good. How are you doing?
Doing good.
So for everyone watching live in the webinar or on YouTube, please share in the chat where you are watching from. We always love to see where everybody is watching these live streams and webinars from. And also, we're curious on how close of attention do you give to light and shadows while you're walking around with your camera? So the Photographer Show is presented by Tamron. So we wanted to just tell you to please be sure to check out their instant savings for Mother's Day that they have going on. Just go to tamron-usa.com to learn more about that. And today we are talking with Ivan Rigamonti. Welcome to the Photographer Show, Ivan. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Thank you, Scott. As you said, my name is Ivan Rigamonti. I'm 60 years old. I was born and I also grew up most of the time in Switzerland. I'm Italian and Swiss, so definitely English is not my mother tongue, just to warn you if I need some pre-processing time before finding the right words. I'm not a professional photographer, so photography for me is a hobby. I make my living as a software developer and a UI UX designer for apps for elderly people. So that's what I'm doing. I have two children. They are grown up, left the house, left the building. So my wife and myself and our cat, who is listening somewhere behind there, are living now in a much too big house just at the southern border of Zurich.
Nice.
Wow. So that's it sounds like you've got a very interesting family history that maybe at some point during this conversation we'll get to learn a little bit more about you and that history. So this is very exciting. I'm really excited about this conversation. So for those joining us live in the webinar, please ask questions in the Q&A section. You'll notice that in the webinar there is a live chat and a Q&A. The live chat is just to discuss whatever we're talking about on the show. Again, like share where you're from and things like that. But if you have a specific question for Ivan, then please use the Q&A section. That way we can monitor that specifically for Q&A. And if you're joining us on YouTube, in the live stream on YouTube, there is a live chat there as well, where you could also ask questions for us as well. So first question for you is the same question we asked to every guest. What was your first camera?
It depends if you're meaning the first encounter with a camera or my first own camera. The first was when I was about 10 years old. My father had a Kodak Instamatic with these disposable bulb cubes, and he allowed me one photo to take because he also wanted to be on a photo once. So he gave me the Kodak Instamatic. I tried to look through the viewfinders like the adults did without seeing anything. I pressed the shutter and then the father jumped towards me trying to say something like don't, but it was too late. I burned my finger at the light bulb. So that was my first hot encounter with photography. But my first own camera was when I was 19 years old. I bought a Canon A1 and I still have it. This camera.
Nice.
So 42 years old. And yeah, that was my start with photography. I didn't have a precise idea what to do with it. I was just attracted by this technology, optics and things like that. So it was less of composition or something like that. It was just this technological masterpiece of that time.
Right.
And by the way, anyway, if you look at the Canon A1 and what I'm using today in terms of body design and ergonomics, it's not much different. 42 years in between. So the design must have already been very good at that time.
Do you still shoot with it? Do you still use it?
No, very rarely, because it's really you have really to get accustomed again, taking a picture, not knowing how it looks like, then waiting for days, coming back, and then you miss the connection between the moment when you took the picture and when you see the result. At least you're no longer used to that, and so I should have moved myself a bit more to the left or the right, but then it's too late.
So, but that Canon is actually your first camera,
Yes.
right? So that's not like you just bought a new, you bought one used, and that was actually it, right?
Yeah. Yes, that was.
So my first camera were actually my grandfather's and my biological father's cameras, which I have, and again, I also don't use them anymore. But it's that nostalgic, very very personal thing that you can't get rid of because it means so much to you.
There's an emotional connection.
Yeah. It's an emotional.
Yep.
Yeah.
So we're going to be looking at a lot of your work very soon, and there's some really powerful imagery in your portfolio, and I'm wondering what motivates you to create these beautiful pieces of work that you have.
It's a really difficult question. It's not that I'm photographing for 40 years. I bought that camera at that time. I started a bit doing photography, family travel, things like that. But at that time, you didn't have internet. It was difficult to get instruction and information unless you wanted to become a professional photographer, of course. So I didn't have a clear idea. Then a couple of years ago, I said, yeah, I have this camera or others at that time, a Nikon D80, for example, and then I suddenly started shooting on the street. Foreigners and other people, not my family members, and I didn't know that this is called street photography. And then I said, okay, yeah, it is interesting. But then I started learning that you could also improve in that perspective, also try to find the right moment, the right light. And then I saw a lot of these famous New York photos with this light casting into these shadowy places. And then I said to myself, I can do the same thing in Zurich. I don't need to go to New York to prove that you can do similar photos. And so I started to go into that direction. And what fascinates me is really light, this harsh light, this spot on the street, and this, that's how I started to go into that direction.
Yeah, and as everybody will see, a lot of your work, especially the ones that we are going to be looking at, are very much light and shadows and contrast, and it's personally my favorite to see when it comes to street photography. In fact, there were at a few years ago at out of Chicago photography conference, which Lori, you might have been there potentially.
Might have.
Might have. So Rick Salmon was supposed to be doing a photo walk, and he couldn't for whatever reason. He was getting there late or something. So they asked me to take his place, and I did. And I hosted this photo walk, and I specifically told everybody, this entire photo walk, the one thing I want you to look at is light and shadows. I only want you to photograph light and shadows. And in Chicago, it's like New York City. The architecture is very similar in some ways, and I mean, you definitely have that city life going on. So it was kind of the perfect atmosphere for that too. So when you are out doing street photography, you mentioned a lot of times, probably most of the times, it's tourists and people from out of the country or whatever. That do you approach these subjects and spike a conversation, or do you just take their picture and move on?
The second is true. I never approach them asking for doing a street portrait, because I think to do it that way, you should not influence the person you are taking a picture of. That's how I'm doing it. Also, I assume that if I'm going to ask, I have then to justify, and then you have a pose. It's no longer natural. I also like to have a moving person in the picture, not somebody standing there and waiting to get photographed. And that's why I never ask the people.
And so right now, I know that everybody watching this is thinking, well, do you get a model release? And here's the thing. Every country is different about model releases and whether they're required and in what situations they're required. And even, different cities or different towns or different, every place is different. Like even down to the specific location in a specific country could be different. So I wonder, and I know other people are wondering, after you take the picture, do you approach them and say, hey, I just took this, I hope you like it, would you mind if I use this in my portfolio? Could you sign a model release?
If I took a picture which I would really be convinced that I could publish it in a way to get money out of it, then I would approach the person. But what do I do with these photos? Of course, I post it on Flickr, sometimes also on Instagram, but most of the time I try to post photos where the face is hidden or the person is in some way not recognizable, and where the person is just part of a composition. I know this sounds a bit like justifying not asking the people for a model release, but I never earned a single Swiss franc or US dollar with my photography. I spend a lot, but don't earn anything. So yeah, it is how it is.
And legal wise, in most places, if you're not planning on making anything from it, you don't have to get a model release. I believe that Germany is different. I could be wrong. I'm not a lawyer, but I believe Germany is different, and you need it no matter what. But for the most part, you're typically okay. Definitely consult a lawyer, though. Everybody watching this, consult a lawyer before you take my word for it. So before you held up your Canon, and I think you were holding up a Sony. Was that correct?
Yes, it's correct. Yes.
So is that what is your sort of go-to street photography camera and lens?
Recently, I changed the focal length because I didn't want to repeat myself again and again and again. So I used to take focal lengths between 35 mil and 50 mils, so typical street photography. And now I'm going for longer focal lengths. It's more challenging because we have really narrow alleys. So when you take a photo, either you know that you are going to take only part of the body, or even if you are on broad streets and you are on the other side of the street because you want to have compression and all this stuff with layers, you have to expect that a lot of people are crossing in front of you, so you might miss the shot because of that. But that gives an additional challenge for me now to go for 65 currently most of the time, and also 135, which is really extreme. Then you have a big challenge to do something.
Yeah.
By the way, one photo that you will show is with 135 mil.
I think I know which, but So maybe when we get to it, let me guess.
Okay.
Yeah, my typical go-to is either a 35 or an 85. But so that's really interesting that you go even further. Oh, okay, this is fun. And so what were you using before you decided to go for the longer lengths?
I used most of the time. I have statistically evaluated this, not for this show, but just because I was curious, and I saw that nearly 80% of the photos that I took was 35 or an equivalent of 35. So the 23 when I used the Fuji X-T2.
Nice. Yeah, that's at 35 is my absolute favorite focal length. I feel natural when I have a camera and a 35. I feel like the possibilities are endless.
Yeah, definitely.
Great. So want to take a short break, and just to remind everybody, if you have any questions for Yvonne, or you just want to ask a question in general that either Lori and I can also answer, please use the Q&A section in the webinar. And if you're watching on YouTube, please use the live chat to ask a question there. Lori and I are monitoring both, so we will be sure to get to your questions. Also, to remind you that PhotoFocus is participating in the virtual storytelling conference and hosting free international photo walks. So if you want to learn more, go to photofocus.com to find out about this awesome virtual conference and how you can sort of take this virtual learning offline to these photo walks. So we are going to get to your photos in just a minute. I have one more question before we get to your photos. What is now? I think you've mentioned this, but I kind of want to get a little more specific if you can. But what is your absolute favorite place to do street photography?
Well, currently it's Zurich in general, but in Zurich itself is, if I feel somehow lonely, then I'm really in the historic quarter of the city. The problem there is, I can explain that if you want to, is okay, then let's say that it's on the one side, the buildings are old buildings, so they have a lot of ornaments and things, so they are not just these clean flat buildings that you have, for example, when you have modern skyscrapers. And also in the center of Zurich, you have the problem of these narrow alleys, a lot of people passing by, so it's always difficult to find one single person in the right moment. And also in modern times, everything tries to get your attention. So you have advertising, crazy shop windows, and all this. So especially if you then take color photos, it's really difficult to make my style, which are more clean with a lot of negative space and not so much distraction. So if I really want to do something which like a low-hanging fruit, then I go into the so-called quarter 5 in Zurich. That's an upcoming area. So it's like every hipster goes there. There are new shops, new restaurants, new buildings, theater, and so. But the buildings are a mix of industry from the past combined with modern architecture of the present. So there you find more this sort an ambient which is more similar to New York, for example, or Chicago.
Yeah,
I was once in Chicago.
Yeah, the way you were describing it definitely sounds very much like the Soho, Lower East Side area of New York City. That doesn't quite yet have all the modern buildings, but they're slowly getting there.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a great area. That's a great reason to love a specific spot. I feel like those spots, you're every time you go there, you're going to see something different. Even if the buildings don't move, something's going to be different. So that's awesome. Okay, let's dive in. Let's dive into screen share your photos. Just let me know once you see your photo
I
up.
see it. Yes.
All right. So I don't think this is the 135 millimeter.
Yes, you're right.
So what really caught my attention on this one is that you practically have the entire gradient scale in this one photo. I absolutely love that on the left side, it's practically pitch black, and in some areas is pitch black, but then gets brighter, and then you got that first strip of light that is practically blown out, but is not blown out. There's still detail on it. And then you get darker and then brighter again, but that second brighter part is full of detail, lots of detail. So that really caught my attention. I love this photo. And you also got the subject walking right to left, which has that hero vibe going on. Right to left always is hero, left to right is always villain. So that's just your typical superhero thing. So anyway, I love this. Why don't you share some about this photo?
Okay. This day I was out testing a new lens. I had a Voigtlander, a 40 mil manual focus on it. So I already struggled with the longer focal length than 35. Here, ideally, if I would have wanted to take the complete person, I would have needed 28 or 24 even. And what attracted me here was the fact that for a short period of time, I think 5 minutes or so, you had this V shape of light. And 5 minutes later, you didn't have anything else. And also, because you have this diagonal on the right of shadow and light, it was possible to take picture of persons which are half cut down and not vertically. So meaning you have the front part is hidden and the back part is shown, or vice versa. So you have also this diagonal. And what's difficult here is you see maybe a person coming. So yeah, she comes, you're waiting. Hey, why are you stopping? Why are you turning the way around? And then the person is again away. Or what you have often, because this is a tourist area, you have couples or more at the same time, and then you can't do a photo like this. And then was this person, I think he was waiting for his wife, I assume, who was in one of the shops. So he went back and forth all the time there, like like a lion in the cage. And so he helped me to get the right moment to take this picture. Also, I was very happy to have his eyes hidden. So a bit of mystical. So how does he precisely look? And so, and yeah, that's why also his jacket going back and forth. So that's why I took this this photo. Also, at that time, I was trying to have not always these two-dimensional photos, this flat where you have a wall, background, a person, and that's it. So that's why I stood at that angle, that I could also have this alley going up, having a bit of this three-dimensional.
Yeah, the composition and the shapes and the way, yeah, it's amazing. The way it works.
Think there's this Easter egg too for the architectural lovers. There's an Easter egg in that reflection in the window where you're actually seeing the stairs that go up this alley, which is great because you look at this like, oh man, that would probably suck to walk up, but then there's stairs and you have to look closely to see if there's stairs. So I love there's an Easter egg in there too.
Yeah, you are a very good observer, because I saw these stairs only days after. I know that the stairs are there, but on the picture I only realized it much later that I also have taken those stairs.
Yeah, and it's a perfect reflection, like it's perfectly exposed in there too. So it's great. It's great that you can see it so well. I've got a quick funny story related to what you were saying, how people walk by or walk away, whatever. At that same photo walk I was talking about in Chicago, we went to this one location near the Bean, the famous Bean, and and I was photographing down these stairs, and it was perfect shadows that were complementing the stairs, and I was waiting for the right person, and people kept noticing me and then walking away and not going down the stairs, or like walking fast or whatever. And finally a girl walked down the stairs with a striped shirt on, and I was like, boom, got it. Like waiting for someone else that had some sort of pattern that complemented the rest of the light and shadow going on. And it worked out. Sometimes you just gotta wait.
Patience.
You gotta wait a while.
Patience. So,
yeah.
Yep. All right.
And what happens very often when you have such a situation is that the person sees that you are taking a picture, and then she goes down to hide.
Right.
So they are able to stay, so that she's not taking the picture and things like that. So you have also to have luck to have the person in the right place.
Yeah. Yep. So I could be wrong, because I think the next one could be it too, but I think this is your 135.
No, that's a 65.
This is so good. I love how it's like, it's silhouetted, but when you look at the hat and the beard, there's still texture going on, so it's not perfectly like 100% silhouetted. There's still that little bit of detail that you can notice when you really pay attention to it. And it stands out so well from that orange vibrant wall. So I love this one too. You want to share something about this?
Yeah, it's interesting that the second photo is also with a manual focal lens. So it's a Voigtlander 65. This photo I've taken in December, let me check, 2019, in Como, Italy. I know Como. It's the northern part of Italy. It's just across the border of southern Switzerland, because my parents grew up there. So, but I don't know Como that well, like Zurich. So the problem is with such photos is to find the right spots for this shadow light play like this. And here again, 5 minutes before or 5 minutes after, you would have a complete different story. So it was in a not so busy alley, nobody passing by. And I was just saying to myself, okay, and now I take an urban photo without a person on it. And it was appealing, these colors there. So I experimented a little bit. And then this young man came by, and then I knew if I'm pointing the camera, he will realize that. So I had the camera in front of me, so with the flipped screen this way, and I saw him coming. And again, what I often do in such a case, I try to take the rhythm of the person walking. So step, left, right, click, 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 left, right. And so that, and he didn't look at me, because otherwise I would not have had the chance to take this goatee. And I had luck. Once more, I had luck. And,
but luck is one thing. But what you just said about how you followed his rhythm, a lot of street photographers or people that are learning street photography or just out there enjoy shooting it would not go to that level. They would just be shooting the people in the shadows, and they wouldn't go to that level of paying attention to the rhythm of how the person's walking. So, I mean, that can be really important in the moment that you capture, making sure. It's kind of like when you shoot animals and how you pay attention to their feet when they're walking. So they don't look like they have 2 feet, or, so there's space in between, it's the similar kind of concept.
You're right. Definitely.
So luck is one thing, but you have to, you put more into it than just being lucky.
Yep. I mean, plus you knew what to look for once the moment presented itself, which is not luck.
Right.
In any way.
And you're aware that the shadows are only going to be there for 5 minutes. You do your work, you do the work that goes into it.
And also in that scene, I remember that I said to myself, "Oh shit, I have manual focus." So and I was very narrow because it was a narrow alley. So I quickly changed to f11, so to be sure that I have more depth of field. Because if you look precisely, he's not completely sharp as the wall behind, but it's okay. You see enough details.
Right.
Yeah.
Street photography is one of those genres where focus isn't the most important thing. I mean, you don't want it to be completely blurry, but if it's soft, if it's slightly out of focus, it's actually not the worst thing in the world. And in some ways could even make the photo better when it's not in focus. So to me, it's perfectly fine.
Yeah.
I love it. So I'm curious, why was it the color of the wall of why you kept it in color? Because a lot of your work, especially the four that we're looking at today, are black and white, except this one. So I'm curious, is it the wall that made you keep it in color versus black and white?
To be honest, black and white is always the plan B for me, because I love taking colors. As long as it is not too distracting, and things like that. Of course, in post you can do something, but in the end, I don't want to manipulate the photo in a way saying that's no longer reflecting more or less the reality that I've had there. That's why I was also surprised that you took 3 black and white and 1 color. So normally I like photos from Soul Lighter as an example, where color is a part of the composition. So black and white, yes, if I see that it's better in black and white, then I turn it to black and white afterwards. But I never go out, or seldom I go out unless I want to challenge myself. Usually I go out with the purpose of taking color photos.
Got it. Yeah, makes sense. It definitely makes sense. It is funny that I chose so many black and white.
No. I get also more feedback on black and white than colors, so maybe I have to change my and make black and white a plan A.
No, I mean, do you? But I think you probably get that because black and white's more common in street photography. But do what you want. I mean, there's no reason to change your preference because of what people, comment about and stuff. So, okay, this one. So this is villain. He's going left to right.
I have never heard that before. That's so funny.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh man,
I've never heard that.
It's a big Hollywood thing. Now you're gonna notice it.
Every time I watch. Yeah. I'll notice.
Movies, television, anytime. Yeah, you're gonna notice it.
So villain is left to right, and the hero from right to left. Okay.
Yeah. So like on the TV show The Walking Dead.
Yeah.
On the TV show The Walking Dead, most of the walkers are moving left to right. So
okay, interesting.
So this one, it's almost as if you had a spotlight on top of your camera and you just shined it at him, and obviously he's you're standing in the wrong angle for that to happen, but that's it's got that spotlight vibe that just obviously was a natural spotlight, and they totally caught my attention because the person is not the subject, and that is so much fun when you see a photo when the person himself or herself is not the subject. So I love it. You want to share some about this?
Yeah, that's the 135, by the way.
That was my second guess after the previous photo, but
okay. Yeah, that's also in the historical center of Zurich. The building here is called Helmhaus. Is if I translate it in English, it's the House of Helmets. I don't know what the real story behind it is, but it's an open part of this building, The place goes also into back of me, and then you have these arc windows. And you have once a day, when you have sunshine, you have this spot situation. So I have a lot of other photos of that place, because when you catch the right moment, you have a part of this spot on these pillars, and you are able to do such photos. The problem with the 135 at that time was there are so many people passing by back and forth, and most of them, as I already said, are couples or groups. So it's very rare that you find somebody. So you have then to wait until really after work. And the problem is that a couple of minutes later, the sun goes down, and then the arc goes up, and then you have suddenly no longer a light on the floor. So really, you have to have luck that somebody is hurrying along this way, because he was really walking very fast. And I had really the intention of having not all, the cliche silhouettes that I'm doing too often, having just the silhouette. I wanted to have that's why I took that angle, to have part of the person itself on the right side of the frame, but not so that the viewer does not see the face, the head, so he has to guess what the person is doing. Right. And if he wants to guess, he has to look at the silhouette. So you see in the silhouette, you see that he has glasses spectacles in the hand, not wearing them. You see that he has more hair than I have on the head, but that's it. and the rest you have to guess.
No, that's my favorite.
I mean, I love it. It's an awesome photo anyway of a silhouette with the way it's spotlighted like that. But the fact that you intentionally left only partial of the person makes this for me. I just, because that makes it, I just find that way very interesting, as opposed to just leaving. Because a lot of people would have taken the shadow probably and not thought about leaving the person in, because it would have been maybe more mysterious that way. But it kind of makes it mysterious this way. It makes it cinematic to me, with the person halfway there and walking out of the frame.
And just like I mentioned with the first photo, how there's that full gradient, you've got that going on here in a different way, of course. And the background, I look at that wall and I'm like, I wonder what's on the backside of that wall, because it's not pitch black. The fact that I can still see makes me wonder what's behind there. If it was pitch black, I wouldn't even think twice about what's behind there. But so it's so interesting from the full aspect of this, from top to bottom, left to right. It's just so interesting. So we've got one more photo, and so this is great on so many levels. Horizontal lines, vertical lines. You got geometry going on here. You've got the really cool shadows coming from the security camera. You've got the maximum 15-minute LED light signs that you can actually see, which is great, and the cool shadows coming out of that. There's just a lot of great shadow work going on in this photo. Even before we even get to the woman that's walking, it's just it's so fascinating how much is going on in this, and yet at the same time it's minimal too. It's just a great combination of things. Do you want to talk about this?
Yeah, this is one of the other place in Zurich I mentioned before. So this is in this upcoming area with modern buildings and industry and elder industry building. The funny thing about this photo is I took it after a longer period where I didn't go out to do street photography. It was last summer. It was not because of the pandemic. I had so much work to do that I had no time or no energy in the evening to go out to take photos. But but this is a pity because I would have had a lot of chances to take empty streets because all people had to stay at home. So I missed that opportunity. But anyway, so it was the first time after months that I went on the street, and I had my Sony camera, the 135, the 65 with me, but I still had it in the bag. So I left the train station there. I walked in the backside of that building. I took out my Ricoh GR and said, well, I want to warm up a little bit to get used to take photos without being noticed. So strange to say, but this is a warm-up photo. So at that evening, and then I saw these diagonals and all this. I saw this woman coming. So again, rhythm, take, and unfortunately, she didn't turn and go the other way around. And then I looked at that photo and said, oh, great. The first shot is already so good. So I was really motivated to restart taking photos that evening. But this was the only one which was good at that evening. So the first warm-up photo was okay and everything else was not okay. So yeah, that can also happen.
Yeah, sometimes it's more about the fun than actually coming out with something. Something. But you came out with something that just is incredible. So well worth that evening. Try
for sure.
So,
better one than
awesome.
nothing.
Yes, yeah. So normally with each photo, I ask a question about how you post-process, how you edit your photos. But I get the feeling that you've got a very consistent approach across photos, whether color or black and white, and you've got a specific purpose for each. So can you briefly talk about, what software you use to edit your photos and like sort of a, summary of how you go about it? What's your methodology?
Yeah. When I started to go mirrorless with the Fuji, everybody said on the internet you have to use Capture One because processing raw files is better than Lightroom and so on. And I already had this Adobe photographer subscription, but I tried Capture One, and I was much more at ease with Capture One because you have these possibilities of layering, using layers like in Photoshop. And so I changed my post-processing into that direction. What I usually do when I take photos out in the street is trying to protect the highlights, but not so much with this automatic protection which Sony provides, because I learned from a YouTube video, of course, that the raw file has much more headroom. So I think I answered, or I made a comment about this exposure for the highlights, that you have much more headroom in the raw file. So when I don't see zebra on the LCD, then I know that I'm below this 109% of highlights. So that allows me, as shown in these photos, that you have structure in the highlights. The 2Days camera have so much dynamic range that then you have also no problems with the shadows. What I learned in the last couple of years is that if you exaggerate with crushing the shadows, that you have them completely black, then the picture very soon looks really flat. That's so it's more sort of the preparation when taking the picture than the post-processing afterwards. What I did in one of those photos is, if you convert it to black and white and you have all the color channels still there, then you have, of course, the possibility, for example, if the the trousers of the person are too light and the person had blue jeans, then you can go down with the blue channel to make the trousers darker. So that's what I usually do. Then it might be that I have to straighten the picture if it is not completely or is somehow crooked because I had to do a quick shot, things like that. But yeah, that's it. What I'm doing, it's not so much of a science. What I exaggerated in the beginning is, oh, clarity slider. Oh, it looks great. Then you go all the way down, and then you have a lot of contrast, but then it also looks pretty unnatural. So you have maybe first to exaggerate and to come back to a level who you like, and that's it. So it's not much of a secret in post processing.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm a big fan of simplicity, and in a way, kind of a purist when it comes to how I edit as well. So I definitely appreciate it when others have a similar approach to things, doing as much in camera and as less afterwards as possible, just enough to make it how you want it in post. So one final question that I have for you. I'm not seeing any questions come in from any of the attendees in the webinar or on YouTube, but I have one more question for you. Can you share a tip, one final tip for photographers about either a technique or equipment that you think will be worthwhile? By the way, and if you realize it or not, but you're stepping with your subject was a really good advice for any street photographers out there.
I've never heard anybody say that. I've never heard anybody mention that, and it's a really, really good point.
Yep.
Yeah, that's for sure one. What's maybe also unusual is what I recommend for street photography is, if it is possible, if the camera and the lens is not too heavy, is to avoid having a strap which goes around your neck. Because I come very often to a situation where I have to go low, and then if I have the strap here, then I have to go down as well. Or if there was, for example, once a situation, I was on the stairs, moving stairs, and I saw below, in the floor below, a woman drinking a Coke, and at the same time with the smartphone. So she was looking up that way, completely immersed in the talk. And because I used then a hand strap, a wrist strap, I was on the moving stair, go out this way, wait until I was on top on her, shoot, and then go back. And if I had to take off the strap and go there, then I would have missed the shot. So I got used this way, so I cannot lose the camera. I can play with the weight. If I get tired, I can or even leave it and then take it again. So I'm in the meantime used to it. And I think for street photography, especially if you are not only always going up and looking through the viewfinder, because I have anyway a problem with the glasses, so I wouldn't see the whole scene there. So I very often have it tilted, the LCD, and that's also maybe for street photographers a tip I can give, which is not the typical tip in street photography from the equipment point of view. Other than that, try to eliminate as much as possible in the picture. That's to have a picture as clean as possible. It might not always be easy to do, but for this type of street photography, it is important. If you do the other type of street photography, which goes more towards documentary or a scene with a lot going on, then it's not critical. Then you want maybe have to have a lot of layers, a lot of people in it, a lot of things going on. I struggle to interpret such photos because I never precisely understand the intention of the photographer. Is it now an intentional or is it just a random snapshot? But that's just my opinion. That's why if you want to do it more that way as I did, then you have always also to be very patient and to look for a clean context.
Great advice.
Intentional.
Oh, yeah, that's great advice.
Yeah. Yep.
Awesome.
So yeah, I'm not seeing any other questions from the attendees.
No.
So we're gonna wrap it up. I just want to say thank you, Yvonne, for joining, for sharing your
Amazing.
work, for talking with Lori and I today about all this fun photography stuff, and of course for just taking the time out of your day to join us in general. So we're gonna go to the outro, but thank you, Yvonne, and have a great rest of your week.
Thanks very much.
Thanks to you.